Hey everyone, welcome to Navigate the Web, where we talk about business, life, design, and all kinds of interesting things. Today we've got a very interesting topic. Actually, first before I get off to that, Brandon, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Robert. Good to be back in the hot seat. It's been a while since we've done a few podcasts, so I'm excited about today's topic.
Exactly, man. Me as well. Because what we are doing, I'm excited because we are actually going to post this on YouTube. If everything goes well, we will be sharing this on YouTube and then all the other social platforms. So, our first episode, haven't done this in a very long time. I am super excited because we are talking about mental health and I guess the reason why we're talking about mental health is because of experience I had in the beginning of the year where I went into this dark hole. Right, actually it was December, over the December holiday period. I went into this dark hole and I was actually struggling to get out of it, to break free, until I realized that, what, if I don't do something about it, I'm going to go down this road where I am depressed, where I make my whole family's life miserable. And so I thought maybe let's just talk about it, Brandon. I'm sure you've got 20 plus years in the industry, and so you've probably went through a lot of these things. What are some struggles you had in the past?
I
Let's talk
think
about it.
I think the number one, and I mean it's normal for any entrepreneur, business person, founder. If you're in a similar seat, or you're feeling tired, or you're feeling a little bit down, when you go into these things, you think you're going to get to a certain level, or at least you set yourself certain expectations, and then you realize that maybe you set too high an expectation on yourself. So there's a little bit of that comes into it, but for the most part, from my personal experience, it's been challenging to be an entrepreneur over the years. You've got to deal with yourself, your personal energy. You've got to deal with the fatigue of the hours that you've got to keep in order to get things done. And I think that's normally the thing that gets me personally is keeping that work-life balance. And the moment, and when I say work-life balance, obviously working an 8 to 5 for most entrepreneurs is a little bit tricky. So, but definitely having the time to switch off and to recoup and to make sure that you don't burn out has probably been one of my biggest challenges. Because as I get to that line, I'm normally the one that can't see the line, but it's the people around me that go, "Whoa, maybe you need to take a holiday or you need to take a break." And I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm good to go. I'm on this." Um, but over a period, it starts wearing on you, and then you start noticing that. Sure. And I mean, it happened to me a year and a half ago where I hit a burnout again, and I was man down for 6 weeks. And I
Sure.
was operating, but I was operating at a 50 to 60% of my normal capacity, and you almost feel like someone's turned down the sensitivity meters, and you can't really um, get up to the speed that you need to get at, which causes more frustration, which is like a self-perpetuating cycle. And in my case, that has a dent on your confidence. So you feel like, oh, what am I doing, or why don't I feel as good as I used to be in X, Y, and Z? And yeah, for me personally, you start questioning, like, why am I even doing this? Am I good enough to be in this industry? So that whole imposter syndrome starts kicking in. So yeah, that's been my experience.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah. I
facing
guess
burnout.
yeah, I guess the challenge for entrepreneurs is, you know this, that as an entrepreneur you always on, right? You look at social media, you look at all of these platforms, and your mind starts running around, and you start racing, like, what do I do? How do I get sales? How do I get leads in? How do I get work in? How do I pay salaries? How do I pay bills? And all of these things. So you're always on, thinking about not just growing your business, but also all these other aspects of, being an entrepreneur. And so at night, you, you're done with work, you go home, right? Your mind is still racing, you're still going on like that. You're like, man, I need to do this, I need to do. Actually, last night I was reading, right? I was reading, and so I'm reading the Bible, and I'm trying to, just switch off. But I'm thinking about the presentation we had this morning. I'm thinking about this and that and the other. I'm having a conversation with my wife, but I'm also thinking about work. And so this thing of always being on, I think, what do you think about that? Because is it a social media thing, or is it something we see? Because, like you said, imposter syndrome. You look at other people, you see how their businesses grow, you see how successful they are, and you're worrying like, man, am I able to get to that level? Like, I had this experience now recently. I'm like, why is things not working out for me? Why is things not working out for me? And so, what do you think? Like, why are we? Is that just a normal thing,
I
or
think
is it
so. I think it's the
society?
keeping the. I think it's both. I think we get trained. I mean, my early mentor in digital taught me, the internet never sleeps, so you better count your hours. And I mean, that's quite a strong-handed thing to say because you start considering like, am I working enough? And so in my early days, we would work ridiculous hours. I think my longest stretch at a time was doing 52 hours no sleep, or at least little cat
Wow.
naps on the couch, and it's bad. You start getting to the point where you hear things that aren't there and see things that aren't there. It's pretty trippy, but it's not good for you in the long run or in the short term, because you hit those burnout phases. And that was how I kind of started as an intern. As my early agency days was that gung-ho, all guns blazing. You finish the brief at 12 o'clock, you go out and you party to 3, and then you wake up and you carry on the next morning. And that kind of lifestyle obviously was shown to me as an option, or that's how you do it. But very quickly, a lot of us realized that, and for myself, uh, it didn't work. I started having
Yeah.
strains in my relationships. You start having strains on your health. You start having strains on your finances because you're not paying attention to the things of highest value, and you start spending your money on frivolous, wasteful things because you're in the moment.
Mm.
So you start by not valuing your time. It has such a knock-on effect on other things. And we think that our pursuit of work and all these achievements is going to give us a higher return. And it can, if it's truly like intrinsic to who you are as a person. And this is what I do. Then 100%, spending 8 hours a day on that is probably going to get you to where you need to be. But if not, you need to temper yourself and have that little bit of grace, and realize that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and not
Yeah.
compare yourself to other people, because they're always on cycle. And having been in a lot of agencies and running my own agencies, everyone projects, and I've projected a very different image on the outside to what's often going on the inside. On the
Mm.
inside, you're crumbling and you feel no confidence and you feel like running away, and on the outside, you holding the position of this agency of the year, or this or that, or whatever the case is. But everyone has, on average, 5 sets of issues that they're dealing with. And for me, it's been recognizing that and going, all right, I'm not going to push that away anymore. I'm going to start actually dealing with those things. And it's a process. I think every year I've got a little bit better on the health, a little bit better over here, and then you slip back. You start falling into old habits again and picking up the chocolate bars or the extra cup of coffee and cappuccinos, and you're
Yeah.
like, this is not good for me. I need to get those 10 hours of sleep, or I'm going to pay the price. So it's a constant, for me at least, it's a constant check in with myself, check in with my family. Am I working too hard? Um, and try and get that balance again. And I can also tell, when you start getting a little bit ratty or a little bit moody, then maybe it's
Yeah.
time to come away from the computer, get a bit of a breather, and then get back into it, tomorrow. And so, yeah, but it's challenging.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what are some trigger points, but I know, like, when was it? A week, 2 weeks ago, I started realizing, because I was always on edge, and I realized that I'm making my family's life miserable. I'm stressed out. I'm worried. I'm also at peace, but I was thinking, man, I should probably not be as busy. And then I realized that, listen, I think some of the trigger points for me was like, when your family, when your wife starts complaining, if you're married, or your girlfriend, whatever, or when your kids want to spend time with you and you're just always busy. And I try and identify those things, and I realize that maybe I should just, I don't care if I'm busy or not busy, whatever the case might be. I'm actually going to go away for a weekend, for a couple of days, just to go and refresh and get to a stage where mentally I'm okay, right? Mentally, and I think it's important. We need to find that work-life balance. Right, I've decided that at least once or twice a week I'm going to take a walk before I start my day. Take the dog, go into the neighborhood, just take a walk with the dog around. Otherwise, if we don't find that work-life balance, if we don't find that safe space, you are going to burn out, and you're going to get to a stage where, I remember, there was a friend of mine told me about one of his colleagues. Um, this was a few years back. And so this guy was on his way home. And this guy, similar, you probably worked a couple of days without sleeping, hectic pressure. And then what happened was he stopped at the robot. And then all of a sudden, his whole body just went numb from his neck downwards. And he couldn't move. He couldn't move, right? Someone else had to stop by his car, and then he could speak to them and say, "Listen, I'm unable to move." So, just because of the mental breakdown, I know some people deal with this differently and have different issues, in terms of mental breakdowns and stuff like that. But I think it's important. We need to. Maybe there are a lot of people who spoke about it, but in the creative field, we are always like, you always, you need to be one step ahead, so you have to push yourself
Mm.
to that breaking point. And I think we probably need to find that balance. Yes, deadlines, you'll have your deadlines, but there are times when you need to realize that, listen, I need to just take a break. Whether it's every 3 months, whether it's every 6 months, you need to just take a break.
100%. And it comes down to, in other industries, you may sell muscle, you may sell certain skills which are physical, or you may do a task related activity. Our task is mental. We're sitting in strategic sessions, we're dealing with things that are digital, that are often obscured and are not really tangible or physical at all. They have no
Mm,
mass, they have no substance. They're here today, gone tomorrow. Just as quick as we build them, they can disappear, literally. And sometimes they do. And that can also take a strain on you. When you invest years and years into digital, you realize very quickly that the only thing you have after the experience, because everything is digital, the trends change, the pixels change, everything changes all the time. The only thing you actually have is how you feel about yourself, how you feel about the people you've worked with, and the
mm,
experiences that you've had in that process. So you want to make them cool. You want to have a great time. And when I realized that for myself, I was like, hold on a second. I'm building sandcastles in the wind. I might as well have fun with it. Let's build the
yeah,
coolest
yeah.
sandcastles so that when they get blown down, at least I know it's a sandcastle. I'm not going to, um, it's not as devastating, to lose a sandcastle, because that's part of the process, is building them up and then breaking them down. That's what makes a sandcastle so exciting, because tomorrow morning you get to wake up, go to the beach, and build another one, right? So I think it's also understanding what you do and the influence that you have, and maybe not taking. I've had to realize I don't need to take myself so seriously. I think that's part of what
Mm,
this podcast is I take myself way too seriously, and I've set myself up with this very rigid framework of how I suppose I need to react and interact in order to achieve this supposed success in the agency world, and blah 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 blah. And over time, I've realized that that's not really necessary. First of all, I need to listen to what my mentors have always told me: stay true to your character, stay true to your values, stay true to your principles and your integrity, which is very different from being authentic. I think sometimes being authentic is out of place. We need to be professional, not just ourselves all the time. We want to project the best version of ourselves, but it doesn't help. It's fake. It needs to
yeah,
be um, authentic. So I think part of that journey is finding your voice. In terms of when is too much, finding your boundaries. When and understanding, okay, I can't do this now, and being okay with that. For me, that's been one of the hardest things, is realizing, what, if you see me in person, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'7". I will never be a race jockey. I'm not going to, it's just, it's not for me. God didn't make me that way. He made me 6'7" and 120 kilograms. So there's certain things that are not in my wheelhouse, and that's okay. Like, so it's the same in business. It's the same in your family life. I've come to realize I'm not the most organized. That's why my wife is there. She'll keep things organized in the home front. It's awesome. It creates that dynamic and teamwork. Um, and I think sometimes in business, especially as the owner of the business, we feel this responsibility to know everything because it's our business. And we
Yeah.
feel this responsibility to look after everybody because it's our business. And we feel this responsibility to not speak our truth. When I've had in my career 4 or 5 burnouts, one I ended up in hospital, and people don't talk about those things, or the
Mm.
times where you've had to liquidate a company, or the times where you've had to um, get up at the crack of dawn to work on briefs, and you're just utterly broken and exhausted. And then after that sacrifice, when you get the wins and you get the breakthroughs and you land the accounts and you get the victories and you're able to celebrate, so you're on that seesaw, and only sharing one side of it, that's inauthentic. Being able to see things for as they are in your journey is a lot more fulfilling, even if it's challenging. And I think it's taken me 20 odd years to realize that the beauty in entrepreneurship is not just the success, but it's also the failures. Because I ventured out,
Yeah.
and that's the adventure. That's the adventure. Any good adventure book that you read, there's going to be a protagonist. There's going to be some challenges. There's going to be some setbacks and big obstacles that the hero has to overcome. In the middle of the book, it's going to seem like dark and there's no hope. But by the end of the book, he's the victor. That's the hero's
Yeah.
journey that we all emulating, and we're seeing out there in the world. But it's being projected often one-sided.
And I also think, man, and this is for my creative friends out there, up and coming designers. You need to learn how to build resilience. All right. It's okay if your work gets rejected, right? Because a lot of times, if you look at how people, like especially young designers, like, I mean, oh man, the client hates my work. And then they go into this dark hole. I don't know about you, but when I was being an introvert, I go into this dark hole, and I start questioning myself: Am I good enough? Am I doing this? Am I what this? You start stressing and you're panicking, and all of these setbacks. I mean, the other day I asked my neighbor. I said, "Listen, man, the person you are today, were you that same person you were back 10 years ago?" And so he thought about it and said, "No, I'm not." And so when you are as a creative, you start now. In 5 years time, you build up that resilience. You're able to deal with things much better. Right, at the end of the day, we go through this cycle where you don't your work is not good enough. Yes, maybe at that point in time it's not good enough, but you get better as you practice more, as you get more. I actually told my son this morning. He asked me, like, "Dad, why do you always go to choir practice?" Right? And so I was like, "Listen, man, here's the thing. When you go when you go and play soccer, for instance, right? So you like soccer. So I said, when you go and play soccer, um, and you don't practice, will you be good?" So he's like, "No, I probably won't be." So I said, "Yeah, whatever thing you do, whether it's be designing, whether it's writing a test, whatever you do, if you don't practice, you won't get good at it." All right.
Mm.
And it's similar in this instance. You don't practice your design skills, you don't analyze things, you don't try out things, you won't get better at it. And so I
Yeah.
see, when someone rejects me, or when someone criticizes me, I see that as an opportunity to learn. All right. And the more you do it, the better you'll get it, and you better you'll be able to
Yeah.
things.
And I think it's a good test to know if you're on the right path in your life. I come back to what a mentor taught me. It's passion and pleasure in the pursuit of purpose. That's a quote from Dr. Demartini. Passion and pleasure in the pursuit of purpose. And if you think about it, it really makes sense, because if you're on the right path, if you're playing a TV game and you get to one stage and you really love this TV game and you master that stage, you can't wait to get to stage two. But stage two is even harder. And then stage three gets even harder. Stage four gets even
Mm.
harder. But you get excited for that challenge. You get excited to go through those obstacles and those failures. So, if you're not excited about the challenges and the obstacles that where you're at, maybe that's also an indication, and it has been for me in the past, that I'm not in the right place. Like, I'm willing to go through the pain and the pleasure in pursuit of my purpose, but it needs to be aligned with my purpose. It needs to be part of who I am, because a lot of the time we're pursuing purposes that aren't true to us. It's not God's will in our life. It's not where we need to be. It's like we're in completely the wrong place, doing what we shouldn't be doing, and then somehow we expect to embrace the challenge. So,
Yeah.
that's also setting yourself up for unnecessary pain is also not necessary. So you've got to be able to balance and realize, cool, now I'm going to go for this and I'm going to give it my all because this is what I love to do. And if I fail,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't matter, because I still go to bed at night loving what I do, even though I failed. You know,
Yeah.
for example, I don't play tennis, but let's say I did play tennis. I would probably be the worst tennis player on earth. But if I enjoyed playing tennis with my son on a Sunday afternoon, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So also set yourself up in places where it's comfortable to fail and it feels good to fail, so that when you do get those successes, it's you're in the right game. I think a lot of the time, I don't know if it was Einstein that said, when you're a goldfish trying to climb a tree, but then you're comparing yourself to a monkey or a cat, or I can't remember the saying exactly, then obviously you're going to feel bad about yourself, because a goldfish is not designed to climb trees, right? So, it's swim in your lane, and that's been my hardest lesson, because in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to
Mm.
have the flashy cars and the watches and the big
The bling
houses and
bling.
the bling bling and all those that come through. And over time, I realized certain things I did actually, when I actually had the money to go and purchase certain things, I didn't. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't on my radar anymore, because my values had shifted. I realized I actually don't want that to represent me or who I am. And I'd rather spend it on something else. Probably, not all of it of high value or low value, wrong or right. I mean, if you love luxury, then that's in your values, then go for it. But if you don't try and create that unfair expectation on yourself,
Yeah.
and that for me has been over 20 years is a process, because it's normally the driver that gets me to burnout. It's that unspoken inner dialogue that you have with yourself that is like, I'm going to show you. I'm gonna do this. And it's like, who are you trying to prove to who? What are you? And I'm talking to myself. Who? Like, seriously, sit down, and then you realize, like, no one's actually watching me. Like,
Yeah.
you think people are watching? They're not. They're interested in their own lives. They've got their own challenges and businesses and obstacles that they need to overcome. And for me, that's been especially difficult, because I think we deal a lot with projected image, and we deal a lot with projected design, and everything is about the visual, because we're in the visual arts, right? So
Yeah.
you do get caught up into it very quickly, and how things look and how things are presented is not really always how they are. And as a designer, it's even, you buy your own BS sometimes, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, we're talking about all of these things. I think, I mean, the beginning of this episode, obviously, I shared how this topic came about. So, and I just want to share it again. So, last year, December, right, I went through something where things just wasn't going my way. I was a little bit stressed out. I was a little bit in the space where I didn't want to be. And so I found, the more I tried to get out, the more something was, it's almost like something's pulling you down. And so the only way for me to get over it was the support that I got. I decided that I was going to speak to someone, and I think This is super important because you need to find yourself some sort of a support system, right? Whether it be a community, whether it be your wife, whether it be a friend. Fortunately for me, I contacted a friend, good friend of mine, and I spoke to him. I said, listen, man, this is my situation. I need some help. How do I get out of it? And I also spoke to someone else, which actually gave me advice, which helped me on the spot where I was able to say, listen, man, there are many others who are sacrificing their lives for something else. They find benefit in doing things to help other people, and why am I complaining? And I think that was the trigger point for me when I realized that some of my good friends were where they gave up their careers and whatever to go on to like a missionary trip, right? And I was like, man, Rob, you're just complaining. You in this state. You just get over yourself, and that actually helped me. Right, I got over myself, and like, man, things are going to be okay. I always talk to my neighbor and some other friends of mine. I said, listen, you know, uh, uh, we so fortunate, right? In the situation that we are, there are other peoples who are worse off than us. Look at um, Israel and Palestine and Ukraine, all of those things. Just, I mean, I don't want to go into that, but it's just that we sometimes I think we put ourselves into that situation where we get mentally affected. We look at other people's social statuses and see, oh, look at this influence and that influence, and how they got this all this bling bling. Like we idolize these entrepreneurs, and I think we just should just stop focusing on them and just realize that we are unique in our own special way. And instead of trying to shout and scream and woo-ha, we just can to continue carry on doing what we do. Eventually, things will get better. But important, find yourself a support system, whether it be a community of other creatives where you come together. I know being a freelancer, usually you find yourself in that situation where you're all on your own. So go to a place where a coffee shop where other freelancers are hanging out, and go and talk to them. Go to networking events, to meetups, and all of those things. Go and attend those things, and try and connect with them and speak to people. That's the only way I'm able to overcome these mental issues.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're not in it alone, and there's a lot of people. I mean, our conversations, Robert, as we've been doing the podcasts, we would spend half an hour quickly before we do the podcast, just catching up, chatting, connecting, because you do feel a synergy when you connect with someone and you're doing a podcast. So we found that having a conversation before we start the podcast helped the podcasts to be better, because then we've kind of
Yeah,
already connected. We're in a bit of a flow of a conversation. We're having a bit of a dialogue. And yeah, for our audience that don't know, those little half an hours kind of became like, coaching sessions for each other, where we would be helping each other through different things, and we'd be like, oh, dealing with this issue, this client, and I've got this going on at home, and I've got to get my son to the dentist, but I've got a meeting at 1, and and all the
yeah,
stuff we all have to go through, but it became a little outlet. And I think for me, I can speak from my own experience, it gave a bit of a positive vibe to our week when we recorded that. So no matter what the challenges were, we needed to put them on the table. We kind of discussed them with each other, and then we put it aside and we focused on helping other people. And I think that's something that I personally, from my experience, if you are struggling wherever you are, is to get out of your head and to get out of your heart, is to go and give service to somebody, and be of
yeah.
service to somebody. It doesn't mean your problems are going to go in. It doesn't mean they're solved. It just means you're pushing the pause and you're being human, because humans are interconnected and you're not in it alone. And just as much as you need help, other people need help. And
Exactly. Yeah.
when you take a break from your own problems to go and help other people's problems, I actually heard online, it was another mentor of mine quoted, just, if you're helping other people with their problems, God will help you with yours. And
Mm, that's right.
you're taking a time out, and by the time you get back to your own problems, you may have a refreshed perspective. You may feel a little bit more energy, like physical energy, even from doing good. Being grateful and doing good raises your energy, It raises your vibration. It raises your mental capacity. You know, you can go and look it up. You know, people with a heart of gratitude are more proactive than people who are sitting feeling embittered and that life
Mm,
owes them something. They've got less energy. They just don't want to do anything. They want to stay tucked up in their blanket at home. So it's natural to feel that way when you're burnt out, to want to stay tucked up in the blanket with a Netflix account and not go anywhere. I
exactly. Yeah.
I totally get that. But at the same time, if you do the counter opposite of how you're feeling and you force yourself out, leave your problems, even though your problems are massive. I don't want to undercut anyone's problems and all, but by going out and helping someone else is really makes a difference. So, you know, that's
Ye-
worked for me in the past a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I also know of another couple who their creative outlet, is to go in and paint and do mosaics and go take. I mean, I like taking a walk. I like going to the beach, the forest, take a hike, or do something outdoors, because, like you mentioned earlier on, get away from the screen, right?
Mm,
Take that break. A friend of ours, many years back, he said, like, when you are stressed, go outside, into stand in the sun for like 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, stand in the sun, and then just soak in that vitamin C, right? And
mm,
then you'll see afterwards you feel much better. And that's
yeah.
true, because a lot of times I'll just go outside, sit in the sun, eat my lunch or whatever, and then afterwards I'm like, man, now I feel more relaxed. Okay, I'm level headed now. Now I can deal with this problem. And a
And
lot
if
of
you
times, yeah,
I was going to say, if you can, you know, like sometimes take a mid-afternoon swim if the weather's great. I mean, I
yeah,
did it the other day. Just jump into the swimming pool in the mid-afternoon. It was almost like my day reset. I did a good solid, 5 hour session in the morning, had a swim, and then I did another 6, 7 hours afterwards. I didn't feel it, so my productivity went through the roof. I was feeling super high energy, um, and it's something so small because that complete reset, immersion in water, out in the sun, it does something to you. So yeah,
yeah.
that was one of my work at home privileges that I was like, wow, that works.
Yeah. And I think we need to prioritize self care. All right. At the end of the day, we can't go on working 7 days a week. You are going to burn out. I know there are cultures and countries where people, you know, they like this always on work, 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 work. But if we don't take care of ourselves, who are going to take care of us? Right, at the end of the day, we need to prioritize, as creatives, we need to prioritize self-care. Otherwise we are going to get burnt out. We'll have that mental blocks. I know agency life. I mean, I've always been in agency life. And it's just where you constantly have to come up with new ideas, new creative ways. And so I'm so grateful sometimes for AI, which makes brainstorming much easier and helps at times. But there are still ways,
Robert's
you know.
confession.
Yeah, I mean that sometimes you need to figure out ways that will work for you. And I think this has been a very, very interesting topic to chat about. And I think we should probably end off here, and because there's a lot of stuff to think about. If you have found value in this session, do like, subscribe, or whatever. And hopefully we'll be able to share more of these things, because that's the our goal of this podcast, is to share our experiences, share what we've learned over the last few years, and hopefully you'll find value and learn some things, and we can take it from there.
Amazing. Thanks, Robert. It's been really good. And yeah, if you anyone out there that's listening to this is struggling with something and you're finding nowhere to turn, yeah, pop us an email. We deal with communities, and we have a lot of people within the communities that we deal with. So if we can't help you directly, we can always pass you on to somebody else who can. But reach out. We also a channel for that too. So awesome.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Yep. Stay blessed. Cheers, everyone.